All right, today we're going to be looking at the Addy Cliffy match. The rule set is SPRC. This is for Kefka. And I already recorded this. This is not in real time. Or I recorded the video. I don't think I paid any attention, but we'll see. I don't remember these cards at all. And we're going to look at the games and talk about them. Because I am lazy, and it's a little less interesting in some ways to do after the fact. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try out a very lazy form of analysis, which is to say, I'm going to evaluate each position without using like calculation, but thinking about each position in terms of three things. Who has a structural advantage? So, for instance, you might think of something like someone starts in one, someone goes in two, the other person goes in eight. Probably the person that going second, they have the first chance to lock something in. If they lock something, like being the first to lock something in, having more safe cards, structural advantage. Okay. Second thing, who has more combo potential? Who has created squares that do powerful things for them, and sort of evaluating how powerful those things seem like they are. And third, who has sort of powerful things in hand that aren't combo related, like the ability to threaten a bunch of captures, the ability to threaten safety. And we're going to sort of evaluate each position of this game on these three things. It's going to be quick evaluations. I don't know that these evaluations will help us decide on moves or anything, but I just thought it might be an interesting way to look at the games. So, okay, sorry for the shaking. Let's see what move one was. All right, 7-1-3-1 in 8. So, of course, there is no combo potential at this point. Structurally, the most common continuation here is, of course, someone goes in 7 and someone goes in 9. I note that Addy is doing this more aggressively than it is often done. He does not have safety in 7 or 9, but neither does Cliffy. So either person can attack the others. I quite like aggressive side starters, so this move, generally speaking, is appealing to me. Now, when thinking about combo potential here, of course, there is no combo potential yet on board, but it is worth noting what is the single card that Addy is sort of most likely to play in a given square. It's 3-2-6-4 in 4 or 6. If Cliffy decides to take 7 or 9, 3-2-6-4 and 4 or 6 is the card that can capture his 4s facing up. And so if there is combo play in 5 against 3-2-6-4 and 4 or 6, that tells us we have some combinative play. So the thing I notice is that 3-2-6-4 and 4 is samed in 5 by 1-1-7-2. 3-2-6-4 in 6, unless I am unable to notice gaps of 3, is not comboed by anything. But I notice 3-2-6-4 in 4 is comboed from 5 with the same. So, my first instinct with Cliffy, if we use that kind of combinative thinking, is that if we play 7, Addy cannot take in 4, and he also doesn't have safety in 9. So the move this train of thought has led me to is 4-6-2-1 or 4-6-1-3 in 7. That's combinations, that's structure, and sort of what cards do we have that do something? Is like 3-5-5-2 and 1 safe? No, but it's not that far off safety. That's worth keeping in mind. Do we have safety in 7 or 9? No, we've already sort of considered that. It's worth holding on to 1-1-7-2 because that threatens 7 and 9. Things like that. All right, let's see our next position. What gets played? I would play 7, I think. All right. So what we see here is that I, didn't record in a useful way, and thus moves are going to be skipped. But we do see Cliffy chose to go in 9, which is less intuitive to me, but probably also works. And I missed this. Is that if he goes in 9 and Addy takes in 6, Addy has used his number higher than a 4 facing down, and he could then go in 7. So Addy decided rather than attack, I am just going to play in 7 myself. Structurally, this is usually slightly favored to second turn. Though, if you check with the solver, one funny thing is side starters, the solver will say almost every move ties. And then one move later, suddenly it'll be like 3 moves tie. And you will have this just drastic jump with side starters. But the 3 moves that tie are usually the most obvious moves. It's usually like the capture in 4, or the like defending my card in 6 and maybe setting up 5. Right? The moves that tie are usually not the hardest things to find, though there are certainly big exceptions. But it's really interesting to see its jump from everything is safe to this is very dangerous. And it, in fact, will spit out this is very dangerous in positions where I think second turn is better, because there are very few moves that tie, but it's easy to play them, and suddenly there are also very few moves for first turn to play to tie. And your move was easier to find. So the solver can be interesting on these positions, but structurally, my general instinct is second turn has the first option to set up an L. They have options to go in 4, they have an option in 6. I would love it if the option in 6 could set up a threat in 5. That does not appear to be the case unless I'm missing something real obvious, but I'm pretty sure that's not the case. But there should be enough options that structurally this is at least neutral equal for second turn, and it could be quite a bit better. Combo wise, who has combo potential here? Not obvious. We did note that if 3264 ever lands in 4, that there is a same in 5, but 3264 has no reason now to land in 4. That's not a capture that Addy is going to be needing, because that card he never needs to capture 7, because 7 can never not be his unless 4 is already occupied. So the quick visual is I'm not seeing obvious combo potential. Like 3264 often lands in 6. Neither player has 5. 1172 often lands in 4. Neither player has 5. There might be cleverer stuff I'm not seeing, but it strikes me there is not significant obvious combo potential in this position. If you are a clever player, D, for instance, D has said in one of his interviews with Vid that he basically looks to maximize combo potential in all positions, and if he doesn't see a way to do so, he looks to minimize your combo potential. Right? This facet of thinking is something that he really pushes, and many of us do not. So yeah, like I tend to be a very structurally oriented player, and I think someone like D tends to be a very combo oriented player. And someone like Vid has changed over the years, but I would now describe as quite a combo oriented player of what they're prioritizing. And our final category is sort of who has useful power. 3552 is still not particularly threatening to be safe. I think Cliffy's hand is kind of a problem facing down left, and he got rid of one card that was bad at doing that, which I think was good to get rid of, but he still has a bunch that are sort of struggling in those 2 general directions. Every card in his hand is bad in at least one of those directions, and one of his cards is bad in 2. So it's a tricky hand to deal with. Addy's hand, on the other hand, kind of has the same problem. Like 3264 potentially does a lot, but it needs help, and the other cards are inconsistent at helping it. Though 3264 and 6421 are a pleasant pair here, and it's really 6143 that is letting the team down. Did that get us anywhere? I don't know. Let's see what happened next. All right. Cliffy plays in 4, which is structurally correct. This is probably the move I'd have spent most of my time on. So Cliffy should be structurally ahead here, right? He has an L where he has secured 1 card. You could argue Addy has secured 1 as well, and could secure a second by going in 6. 6 is going to be a critical move here. But fully secured, Cliffy has the only card fully secured. Those ones are very unlikely to, they could be in a combo chain because most things next to them overpower, but it's very unlikely I think this combo's here. There's just not enough combo potential on board. Unless 3264 and 2 is played. 3264 and 2 is the I have combos on both sides move. All right, we'll have to come back to that because that's in our combo category. But right now, in our structural category, I think Cliffy is doing very well and should be happy with how this game has opened. Combos. Until I noticed that, I was ready to say there is minimal combo potential here. But now I think Addy has a really important decision between sort of three core things you could be doing here. Maybe four, but I would probably focus on three. The first two things I would check is combo play in 2 or structural play in 6. Because going in 6 says I have 2 cards locked on the bottom and you that you can't take and you only have 1. I am ahead structurally. But to do that, I have to use 3264 and my remaining 2 cards are trash. Like really crappy for this endgame. And it's really hard to believe not just that I'm like not winning, but like I may have to be really careful. If that move is gonna hold a tie, I have to check it quite carefully to make sure it does. The second move is the combo move, 3264 and 2. I would note this also concedes using a card that is really good for me. But it doesn't concede any combos to the opponent, and the combo goes through 4 to hit 7 either way. This could be a really powerful option. 3264 and 2 is very appealing on a combo level. We have both squares, they have neither. They have no combos back, and we are flipping extra cards through it. So I think 2 is the more appealing option. And then there's the sort of like, I'm willing to bail out and just tie options in 1 and 5. Now, they are by no means guaranteed a tie, you have to calculate. But the moves that are kind of like, I can't find anything working anywhere else, I'll just play like 6, 4, 2, 1, and 5. And that will be just big enough and just clunky enough that I can maybe hold the tie. I don't think it does here. The idea would be 6, 4, 2, 1, and 5. They go 6. You play 6, 1, 4, 3, and 1 or something, and hopefully 3, 2, 6, 4 sweeps. It doesn't sweep here, so this is a pretty bad idea. So probably the better version is to play something like 6, 4, 2, 1, and 1, and hope that this grovels your way out to a tie eventually. I think the most promising move is in 2, of like our quick look. We haven't done really any calculation. We are just thinking, what do we want structurally? What do we want combo wise? Sorry about my phone. And what cards are good in our hand? Like, what do we want? If you're Addy here, 3264 is doing a lot of work, so there is an incentive to hold on to it. 6143 and 6421 are not doing much work, and it would be really nice if there was a way to use them. So another move that maybe should be considered is 6421 and 2. Setting up a threat in 5, and if they go 5 themselves, you can take 1, and 1 has some inherent value. So, one thing is like structurally, I think 6 is the key square. Combo wise, I think 2 is the key square. And just like, can we find a way to get rid of a card that is bad for us? We might consider, one of the 6s up in 1, one of the 6s up in 5, even one of the 6s up in 3, like 6, 4, 2, 1, and 3 sets up 6, 1, 4, 3, and 6, so maybe it can find some purpose in life. Probably not, but one can dream. But we go 3 different directions depending on what we value and how we think about the position. Obviously, at this point in the game, the most important thing will be whatever you have calculated, but I think where you look first is highly dependent on which of those things you value. And actually, having looked at it, no, that line doesn't work. Ignore me, I looked at nothing. All right, so let's see what happened. Where is Addy gonna go? Addy goes in 1. Okay, so Addy goes in the I want this card out of my hand route. Now, going through our 3 principles quickly. Structurally, it would be really nice for Cliffy to lock in a card. That doesn't actually limit the choices that much. It tells you could play 3, 5, 1, 5, and 2. You might notice you have no left power at that point left, right? If we go on to which cards do I want to keep, you might conclude, yeah, that one's a little dicey. But you just have, I mean, you just have to calculate it out. Basically, like, yeah, it's likely to be 3, 5, 1, 5, and 2, and the big question is, do you lose to something like 3, 2, 6, 4, and 5? Um, when you are down 5-5, but if you can dodge 6-1-4-3, you tie. But I don't think you can dodge 6-1-4-3. So I think you just lose there. Okay, so 2 loses. And again, we should be doing calculation. We should not be just saying, like, I like this principle, so I will make a move in accordance with it. So it looks to me like 3-5-1-5 and 2 loses. And yeah, so that stop looking at it. Then there's 5, of course. 5 flipping 2, and we could do so 2 different ways. So those would be our next 2 candidate moves. And finally, any card in 6 helps lock in 9. You really don't want to use 3-5-1-5 there. That's really useful to keep for later. One thing I note is this is getting a little into combo potential, but if you go in 6, you potentially have problems later in 2. Because often if you go in 6, you're going to want to block 2 with 3-5-1-5. Because that's the card that blocks 2 while flipping something. It flips 1. And if you're not using 3-5-1-5, you're using 3-5-5-2, presumably flipping whatever goes in 5. But those both have a 5 to the left. And I notice if you have a 4 facing up from 6, you play 4-6-2-1 there. Then, if they hold on to 6-1-4-3, that might sweep you, because that will plus any 5. And if you play something with a 3 facing up, they can hold on to 3-2-6-4, and that will plus any 5 with the 3 facing up, because 5 plus 4 equals 6 plus 3. On the other hand, maybe you can go 6, and if they go 5, you go 3, and they just whiff because they have no right power. So perfectly possible 6 is tying, but that would be my skepticism of 6, and we are being lazy about calculation today. My guess is 5 is probably the best option. Though actually, the 2 cards you can put in 5 that capture something both have 5s to the right, and that is kind of risky. And they both have 3s facing up, and that is kind of risky. So 6-1-4-3 kind of sweeps you in that endgame. Alright, so this might be genuinely pretty dangerous. Maybe 6 is the option. I could see something like, alright, we're doing a little calculation, but I could see something like, so combo potential is really going Addy's way. He has found a way to both get a card out of his hand he wanted out of his hand, and set up some annoying combo play. 4-6-2-1 and 6 is the move I'm kind of drawn to at this point. But I think that just... that's a little tricky. 4-6... let's do a little calculation. 4-6-2-1 and 6. My point is, if they go in 5, say with 3-2-6-4, I'm going to go 3-5-5-2 and 3, and your 6-1-4-3 will whiff going in 2. It's 1 to the right is useless. If you go 6-1-4-3 and 5, then you didn't flip anything, and I can play even like 3-5-1-5 in 3, and your 3-2-6-4 whiffs. It would hit my 3-5-5-2, it would same it 2 different ways, but it will whiff on my 3-5-1-5. So I tie against 5. If you go 2, you can't have set up combo potential. And so as long as I go 5 flipping 4, I'm going to hold the tie. I might have better than that, but I have at least a tie there. I don't have to look any closer. And so the move that was scaring me off 4-6-2-1 and 6 was actually 3-2-6-4 and 3. With the point that either of the cards left I could put in 5 have a 3 facing up, and Glacial Eye combos them to all hell. However, we can play 3-5-1-5 and 2 there, which flips 1 and 3. It combos 3 to flip 6. Not super important, but actually super important because 6-1-4-3 can't flip that back. And then so that holds. And then the final move to check is 4-6-2-1 in 6, and then Glacial Eye 6-1-4-3 in 3. And against this, at the very worst, we have 3-5-1-5 and 5, flipping 4. We're up 6-4, and we will tie 5-5 when they take us. So 6 looks like a tie. It's always worth practicing calculation with just 4 moves left. Alright, he goes 5, and Addy is able to set up the combo 2 ways. Right, Addy already had the combo both ways, But you can see Cliffy had the combo both ways as well. He had 4-6-2-1 for both 2 and 6. So if Addy takes either combo, Cliffy can take it back. The problem is Addy had first turn, Addy has last turn. If he has the combo both ways, he can set up, so he gets to do that at the end. So it looks like Addy will win this game. Yeah, nice win for Addy. I think he got a lot of surprising combo potential kind of out of nowhere. Like, it was a position that really did not look like there was a lot of combo play. But I guess some of it is just like, as cards fill out the board, there will always be something. But I think he also did a really nice job of setting up combo potential. And we can see why Cliffy went in 5, right? The move in 5, if Cliffy had last turn, would be a great move. It really is one of those differences between first and second turn and who benefits from there being combos both ways. Because they had the same combo potential. It just turns out only one of them has combo potential that matters, and that's the person who gets to play the final card. All right, was this an interesting way of talking about games? I don't know. I think I'm going to keep doing it for this match. I have another 2 games recorded of this match, and it might be fun to keep talking about from the direction of how are we thinking about this structurally, how are we thinking about this combinatively, and how are we thinking about this just in terms of what cards do I want in my hand, what cards do I want out of my hand. I think those are 3 kind of useful approaches. And because like I'm always focused on like trying to get better at things, that's what I get joy out of. Like my favorite thing is like when things click that didn't click before, and I'm like, oh, I get it now. That makes sense, right? Instead of the feeling of like, okay, that's something I'll never understand, or like, yeah, I can explain that, but it doesn't. The feeling of like when you do enough work on your own, that when that last little bit is given to you, it makes sense and it all clicks and it all coheres. That is my favorite feeling. So I'm always thinking about like trying to get better at things. So I guess what I want to say in that direction is I think there are people like D being the example I gave, who maybe think, though obviously D, tremendously good player and won a tournament and, various great achievements. Um, I think one of the things is if you find yourself thinking a lot in one direction, like combinatively, or for me, like structurally, right? What you probably want to do, I'm not saying these are all equally important. You should not treat them all as equally important. But if you are a specifically, say, combinatively oriented player, maybe the goal is to try to identify more structural moves in your games and try to spend a little more time on those. Or identify, I want to get these cards out of my hand, I want to keep these cards in my hand. Like maybe, and we could see Addy doing it here. He found a way to get 6-4-2-1 out of his hand, and suddenly, because his remaining cards were better, because he had gotten rid of the chaff, he had a lot more combo potential than he did before. Um, and the 4 facing out there did help his combo potential. It wasn't particularly useful in terms of being safe or being able to do things on the board, but it did give his remaining cards more combo potential. So yeah, I guess my thought is if you are strong at identifying moves in some areas and not as strong in others, maybe the idea is to spend a little more time trying to identify what you would be considering if you were a different type of player and spending at least a little consideration on that kind of move.